Welcome back to the Smite Pro League, powered by our great friends over at Prime Gaming. Every single month, Amazon Prime and Prime Gaming in general gives you so many great games that you can pick up, and every single month it always swaps around. So if any of those in that trailer caught your eye, make sure that you're utilizing your Prime membership with Twitch to get your Prime Gaming stuff. So you get free games, free content for games you're already playing, as well as all the other great things that Prime memberships in general offer, like the 2-day free shipping, you get free movies, music, and more with all of that. So make sure that you are utilizing that Prime membership, or if you don't have one, get one, and then link that up so that way you can get Prime Gaming. Thank you so much to Prime for coming for us in Season 9 of the SPL. My name's J-Mac. I got Gormizer joining me on the desk this time around. We're done with the cast. Now we're over, moving to the other side of the room. We got one more SPL set to talk to you guys today about and get you guys hyped for. It's the Tartarus Titans and the Oni Warriors. I think might bring a lot more intrigue than some people would expect.
Yeah, this is a matchup that I think most of last year you just go, okay, cool. What do we talk about? Like, how do we break this? Like, how do we give this meat to try and make it a little more interesting? I think the Warriors have given us a lot of that already, right? I think the Titans have been on a tear. They've been looking great, but I think this team behind me has a lot more going for them right now.
Taking a look at the schedule, our first set of the day is already done, and definitely make sure you go back and watch those whenever the VODs go live, because the Olympus Bolts put on a show with the Jade Dragons, and the Bolts find themselves a 2-1 win, and now we'll round out the rest of our Friday of SPL with the Tartarus Titans and the Oni Warriors, and then still 5 more sets to go for the rest of our weekend. And taking a look at the standings after that first one, the Olympus Bolts join the Camelot Kings at the top of the standings, 2-0 for the both of them. Camelot Kings just slightly ahead in the plus-minus in that regard at the very least, but Tartarus Titans can join them at this point if they can find a win over the Oni Warriors, or the Oni Warriors can play a little bit of a spoiler here against the Titans.
I will say a fun thing about the Titans right now is that they are slowly approaching the same win streak that they were on last year. Right?
Oh, really?
I think, last year and just last year. Between them and the Bolts, like they tied at 8. I think they're on 6 right now from Masters.
Oh, wow.
They lost like 1 game to the Kings at the beginning of their Masters run, and then since then it has been nothing but dubs for them. And so if this is a team that has already been doing that much success and is continuing on that route, they're in a very easily attainable record breaker for themselves.
Tartarus Titans coming hot off of their win during the Masters land, able to find a victory there, and we were wondering, are they going to be able to keep that same momentum coming into phase number 2 so far with the first set that the Titans have played? The answer to that was yes, a very convincing win up against their opponents last week, and now going to be squaring off against the Warriors. And I think a lot of the intrigue with this matchup specifically does come from Paul in that mid lane, because Paul has been all over the place with his picks. You never know what this guy wants to play. Does he want to run the Hunter's mid? Does he want to go with things like the Hell or the Afro, playing the more facilitator style? Or does he want to go for these control style of mages? Paul's diversity just in that role alone has brought so much crazy dynamic to this team.
I'm really excited to watch, I think, just all of their picks, because I think, like you said, like watching specifically in mid lane, what Paul is willing to bring and play out has been phenomenal. I think his Yu Huang last week looked really good as well. So something else that we could see, I think, the kind of new hotness that I'm always interested in. Maybe it gets banned out, but maybe he gets to end up playing that. And like you had said, the E set, being able to bounce back and forth. For the most part, again, like data on them, they came in, they played 2 games, they won 2 games. That was their week last week. They didn't have too much work they needed to do. But when you leave that with a 12.0 KDA, you tend to think, okay, well, what did he play? He played 1 game on ESET, he played 1 game of Yu Huang, he looked great on both of them. That's maybe where we need to look, although we've highlighted it in the past, and I think it's easy to talk about. Not easy to ban out Paul. You could put all 5 gods, all 10 gods. The Titans themselves could ban 5 mages, and the Warriors could, and he'd still manage to look good on whatever he had left.
And then up against Paul, and again, it's the entirety of the Titans, is the Oni Warriors, and Dardas in that mid lane has also kind of had a bounce around between the gods he likes to play, kind of his classic style that him and Cuvo really coined a lot more last week and really brought back to the light was the dodgy Morrigan combo, so you can have these double Pao Laos, and Morrigan is a god that Dardas is very comfortable on. We've seen why it's been banned away. We see why this Oni Warriors team likes to go to it so many times. But not only that, and a reason why I think this Morrigan is so strong for Dardas is he doesn't think like a lot of the other mid laners in the league. Some people are like, okay, I need my big burst ultimate, get my Pao Laos, get my, whenever Robin was big, get this double Robins out here. But Dardas has been thinking so much on the fly, like, okay, I can get a Horus ultimate, get my entire team out of the middle of this danger. I can turn into an extra Khepri and get a revive for my team. He's thinking a lot differently than other Morgan players do.
And last week, Man, that combo that we just saw on the screen, but having the powwow and then the powwow part 2, having the 2 dodges, I think that Dardes specifically was absolutely insane on, like you said, the transformations, but really being able to pick this up, I think the double powwow worked out really well for them, which is it's simultaneously giving compliments to Dardes for making it work so well, and also to Cuvo, because Cuvo's chains were so on point every single time that it was, honestly, it was maybe a little frustrating watching. Like, come on, you got to miss one
Just
eventually.
one,
but it just seemed to be going so well for them. This is going to sound maybe like a dig at them, but like, they're at like a 47, 48% win rate so far this year. Which, isn't that great, but in comparison to what you've expected out of this team, a team that gravitated towards the bottom very quickly throughout Season 8, and every time we reset a phase, it almost always would reset for them going down to, 6, 7, or 8 after the first week. I think that this is a really good spot for them to be in. I think Phase 1 was a little bit of a ramp-up for them, and I think we're going to experience a little bit of a similar turn here in Phase 2, right? It's going to be a little bit of a ramp-up. We've got the beginnings of that, and we saw some good play there. I think we're still in a position where over this next couple of days, we're going to get to see them really, really take over.
Incredibly.
Yeah, so far for the Oni Warriors, Phase 1 was kind of an explosive start for these guys. They were able to find some really big wins against some key teams, even so far as going to being the top 3 in the SPL, when before in Season 8, as you were talking, Navis was typically a bottom 3 team. It was always kind of that question of, can the Warriors still find a win over the Scarabs to stay out of the bottom 2? Can the Scarabs find a win over the Warriors to get themselves out of the bottom 2? So it's always kind of this back and forth. But the good news is we did get a chance to sit down with the Oni Warriors. We got to talk to their support player in particular. Let's go ahead and throw it over to an interview with Neil Ma.
In this new update, the Titans are looking really powerful because Pu Puang is in the God pool, and Paul put on an absolutely powerful performance on Pu Puang. And I think that overall, that character in his pool is just going to make them unbeatable, and there's nothing anyone can do.
How important is alliteration to your winning strategy?
Oh, incredibly, incredibly.
I think they're one of the teams that have adapted pretty well. They took a game off us at Masters, but I don't think they were as good as they were the prior patch. I think they are more of like dodgy players, or like they're more like ability-based players, and like right now it's Golden Blade. I think Fred can play like the Merc and the Nem, which I'm surprised he hasn't like pulled it out. I don't know, I guess we'll see.
Are any of the players on the Titans a threat? They're menaces to society, don't get me wrong. In-game, they can be dangerous as well. Paul is always a little fiendish devil. He's got a lot of picks you got to watch out for. I honestly think their whole team is just really solid, though. I mean, like top to bottom, Aurora and Cyclone have just been looking amazing. Aurora's been looking just right at home, right? He's in people's jungle, playing in your face, playing classic Aurora style. So I think their whole team is someone to look out for. But I think in particular, I think Solo Troll has been playing really well, and they play a lot through his lane. So I think he's going to be a big catalyst to their success.
Any players that stand out as a threat on the Oni Warriors is probably Nika. More recently, it's been like Fred. I think Fred's been doing really well. Their team's just good all around, so.
I think the Titans' win condition, it's kind of weird. I think they just are a bit of a slow, methodical team. I think they just get really good drafts they like that are hard to beat, and they just are always feel so strong. Their mid 3-3s are strong. Their solo jungle matchups are strong in the 2v2, and then they usually just scale and go late game. So usually just when they get a good, comfortable draft, they'll go late game, and it's going to be hard to beat them.
The Warriors' identifiable win condition is usually through solo side. I say if Nika gets ahead and he's on his comfort picks like a Bastet or like a Kleena, he can carry a game. If I was stranded on the island with one of the Oni Warriors, I would go with Neil Ma, because he seems like a pretty gentle fellow and he wouldn't eat me.
I was stranded on an island. I'd have to go with my boy Paul Berger. I mean, me and him just have history. Like, we would be useless.
Sure.
Like, it would not be great, but at least we'd be together. And I mean, I have a lot of memories of that guy, and he's very near and dear to my heart.
I just gotta say, I love all these interviews that we get with Neil Ma. You get a little bit of the fun at the beginning, I thought he mispronounced the name at first with the Yuang, but he called it the
Paul Yu Huang.
Right, so the Pu Puang was the name of that
Which
one.
I've now learned. So
Okay.
this is the question. The Paul Hebo, the Peebo,
Yeah.
as it is
God,
colloquially
I hate
known.
that.
Now, based on the fact that it is Pu Puang, trademark Neil Ma, that means that it should be Peepo, right? Like the P then goes to 2 words.
Yeah, no, that makes sense with what you're going. No, I think what you're saying is
I'm
accurate
trying to
there.
apply math to it, and that's not working very well for me.
You got to
if I'm
keep the
honest with you.
alliteration. It's a combination of math and English
Yeah.
in order to get that.
I'll give you a fun fact though. After that interview, poor Neil. He, we cut it off, and he goes, "Actually, you know what, pulling like Paul on there, he's like, do I feel okay knowing that I'm just like condemning him to die with me on an island? He's like, we're both gonna be useless. I don't know if I like this idea, and so he kind of was wrestling with his morality as he left the studio that day.
I like what he also said about the Titans in general. Is who's the biggest threat on the team? Everybody is. They're all menaces to society and menaces to this game.
Accurate.
And that can kind of trace back. As joking as silly as the answer might seem, that does kind of track back in towards Season 8 when the Tartarus Titans, they pick up layers, they get a whole new dynamic shift to their type of play style. Now all of a sudden we see these new meta-defining strats come out with these Morgan Cthulhu combos, and you throw these Aphrodites and Achilles in the mix, and the Tartarus Titans really shook up the meta for quite some time at the end of Phase 3 in Season 8.
Yeah.
It took a little while for some of the other teams to adapt, namely the Atlantis Leviathans, who were able to go through. But the Tartarus Titans are teams that is a team that is a trendsetter more than anything else, and sometimes can begin to cause problems within the league. We'll see if any new trends are set for this team. Game number 1, picks and bans between the Tartarus Titans and the Oni Warriors. And probably the first one that comes to mind, we may not see it as at least a first pick or a first ban out of the Titans, but the Yu Huang 4, Paul, the Poop Huang, and that's probably the last time that you'll hear me refer to it as that, is something that to be on the lookout for.
I'm honestly interested to see what their entire composition, or not composition, but like drafting strategy is going to be, because like you said, like the Yu Huang is really important to them. I was just looking it up. I'm surprised to see them ban the Nemesis, because it's been one that is highly banned against them, but it's also treated them really well all year, which to me means that they aren't thinking about first picking it, they aren't worried about picking that up, and they don't want Cuvo to get it. I'm also wondering if the Daji, apparently not enough of a play, so they must think that they have a good strategy around that, because last week's Daji play from Cuvo was just insane, and I think that, like, to me, it was very threatening. I think they've gone with very standard bans here for the Titans, nothing that's going to be out of the ordinary, nothing that's necessarily giving anything away either, and it's not necessarily targeted towards the Warriors. It is just what we've seen be dominant in the meta over the last few weeks.
Well, with the bans rounded out, Uller Mercury Jing Wei for the Warriors. On the Titans side, AMC, Nemesis, and Chernobog leaves a lot of gods open, a couple of big supports, namely Kepri, going to be the one the Titans take, but Yamoja's still up if Neilmal wants to go for that one. Obviously can wait a little bit now, doesn't need it. And over in the Soul Lane, I was thinking gods like the Osiris, the Bellona, the King Arthur, all still available, and it will be Bellona pick for the Warriors. And now a Freya Hover. Didn't go so well for the Jade Dragons in their match earlier, but at least still a tease by the Warriors here.
This is, I think, just a strong pick. Again, Kepri, like I look at, and I'm going year long for this for Season 9, because we're only 1 week into Phase 2, so you got to get the numbers somewhere. Kepri is the second most banned god against the Tartarus Titans, right? It is a god that people don't want Aurora to have. It is too good, and unfortunately for them, unfortunately for the Warriors, I should say, they're going to get it. They've top 3'd it 12 times. And they've won with it. Quite a few of those. So this is going to be something that it could be a devastating blow. It also is just really solid for them. Man, if they went, the Morrigan's available. Like, if they went Kepri, Cthulhu, the Morrigan, I don't care what your bottom 2 are. That top 3 would just be too strong to handle.
Iset will be the lock-in alongside Cthulhu, Kepri. So now the Oni Warriors, if maybe they want to grab, their dodgy Morgan combo as kind of a round out here, could be an option. It's what brought them success last week up against the Solar Scarabs in games 1 and 3 of that set, respectively. But the Cthulhu is kind of a curveball out of all of this, because after all the changes, yes, sure, every single god got more HP, they got more defenses, but we've been seeing such a high prevalence of things like Kin Size, Soul Reaver, Ethereal Staff that Cthulhu has kind of been largely glossed over by many of the players.
But they've got a Freya now, right, for the Warriors. Like, unless they're doing something outlandish and throwing it in mid or throwing it into the jungle, you've kind of got this guarantee that at least one role that typically has a hunter, typically gets the Chin Size and the health killers that you see, just isn't going to have that, right? Like, Freya can hit really hard, but we saw earlier that it's not really a lot that you can hang your hat on if you don't get a massive lead, or if the game doesn't last 27 minutes, right, at this point, to be able to get you that gold. So I think that this is an interesting call, but maybe still a good one. It depends on what the Warriors decide to do, because they could still lock in theoretically 2 hunters. I don't know if I like the entire draft at that point if they do it, but you still have a little bit of flexibility, at least one, right, that you can throw in mid or something to maybe help deal with this Cthulhu's health bar.
And I think harkening back to what Layers was saying during the interview is that the Oni Warriors jungle, specifically with Cuva, has been going more towards these burst style of gods, this more ability-heavy damage in a meta where Golden Blade has kind of been dominating for a lot. Gods like the Nemesis and the Mercury, which, again, Layers pointed out, is something that Cuvo can play to a high level of success. We just haven't seen that out of him yet. Obviously, with those two gods banned out, we won't be able to see it this time around. And neither will we see Fenrir or Erlong Shen, as the Oni Warriors banned that one away, and then Morgan and Artemis banned out. And now with an Osiris lock in, that should round out at least the jungle selection for the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because like my brain like froze for a second. I forgot that we've been seeing Osiris jungle, and I was just like, I wonder what's going to happen here. Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense with the way things are going to go. Honestly, I've been a huge fan of what the Osiris has been bringing. I think his gank potential in a draft like this, are you going to kill Cthulhu a lot? Probably not. Are you going to be able to go anywhere else? Yeah. Just spend your time in mid, spend your time over potentially in duo if you're Cuvo here, and it should be pretty good. And honestly, with the Freya over there, I kind of want maybe a heavier hand in duo. Like, yeah, she got a good early go. That's going to help her beginning. Honestly, it still helps a little bit of the late, but the clear is going to be there with the Emoja. It's going to be a little bit better, I think, than what we saw earlier. But you would also welcome a lot of help. Get some kills or just extra gold assists, whatever it is. Bring some of that back over. Try to finish those items a little earlier so that you can hit harder, faster.
Well, it seems that Gilgamesh has been making a rise in popularity, mostly seen out of the Jade Dragons by Sam for Soccer, now making his way to the hands of the jungler for the Tartarus Titans. And then a Chiron down in here, another ability-based hunter that typically we only see on teams like the Olympus Bolts, namely Venenu and Barracuda really like to play that god sometimes, but seen one game so far, hasn't found a win, and then the Oni Warriors will round out their composition with a Shibalanke, and now I guess that opens up the question of, are you throwing this Freya in the duo lane with the Emoja, or are you putting the Shibalanke over there?
Man, I hate that I have to try and help figure that out, right? Because that's so wild. Because, look, you've got the Osiris. Like, so the weird world, it would be, I guess, Freya mid? I mean, that still feels really weird. Like, Freya belongs in the duo lane. She used to be able to go into the jungle, but you've got a Bellona and an Osiris. Osiris has to be able to go in there. I'm not throwing him anywhere else. So then it's just Shibalanke mid versus Freya. I think I prefer the Shibalanke in that regard, but at the same time, you like having his ult because you can just pop that 4, get a free assist wherever he is. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one, I think, for the Warriors here no matter what. Mainly because their damage is going to take a while to get online. Like, that's all I really see out of this. And granted, yes, the games are leaning a little bit longer. But with an ESET on the board, with a Chiron on the board, and a Khepri there, I think the Titans can get aggressive onto Gold Furies, things like those neutral objective Pyromancers, a lot sooner with a lot more guarantee than what you're going to be getting out of the Warriors. And that opens up a conversation to get you a very massive lead early on. And I think that's going to be a struggle for the Warriors. If, you go into 15 minutes and you're already behind, it doesn't matter if 15 more minutes pass and Freya's great. You're going to be 6K, 7K, 8K down. And so, I think being able to manage what the Titans can accomplish at the beginning is the biggest deal here.
Yeah, and if you are the Oni Warriors, you talk about how late game is not going to be so hot for them, especially if they start falling behind. But with this Osiris, and we'll call it maybe the double magic duo lane with the Emoji and the Freya, are you then going to be having Cuvo Fred be that facilitator, put that pressure over in duo lane, and try and keep them behind? Or if you're the Oni Warriors in your Cuvo, is there another place you want to put that priority towards?
Honestly, I feel like Chiron's not the easiest person to gank in the world, so it's one of those things. I want to put pressure on duo lane no matter what. I don't think it's going to be an easily pressured duo lane. I don't think it's going to be an easily pressured mid, but it's going to be a little bit easier, right? ESET, even with the silence, even with the stun, is at least somewhat susceptible to some of those ganks. But it feels like it's going to be difficult no matter where you go. Cthulhu, super tanky. Early on, you might be able to do something with the Bellona. ESET should be pretty easy because it's mobile, but then Chiron just dashes, Khepri dashes, or just throws out their ult. It feels like it's going to be a lot of work for the Warriors jungle to make this one happen.
The Oni Warriors really going to have to put in the overtime to try and find any kind of picks. Maybe they can find a sneaky one on Paul in the mid lane. We'll have to see where the Oni Warriors want to go with this. Can they find a winning game number 1, or are the Tartarus Titans going to start off strong? We'll throw it over to David Mifflin to get us going.
Yeah, what are we, Miff? Are we Dolphin? Have we determined that?
What did you just ask me, bro?
What's our
Dolphin?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What's our name?
Molson. Fun
Difflin.
fact, we can't Difflin? Actually, I don't think we can use, I don't think we can use Molson. That's like a Canadian beer brand. So
Hey, you know what? They should be thanking us.
that's
all right?
actually, it is, because that was my dad's fantasy football team name for like years, were the Molsons.
There's like more to this. I wasn't expecting that. All right.
Yeah, so I think Dolphin makes the most sense.
You
Anyway,
just want your name to go first.
can you, if you can do a Dolphin impression right now, we won't use Dolphin as
No.
our name. All right, we're not doing Dolphin. We can be whatever you just said. All right, Titans versus Oni Warriors. My fault. I got us off track immediately. 16 seconds into the game. This one actually very important. Don't let Mifflin and I undercut the tone, because the Titans have started off their phase undefeated so far, and we have seen two different Oni Warriors squads, some good, some bad, but the Oni Warriors on a bit of a resurgent path here as of late. And a unique team composition to bring forward, Miff. Teams just hell-bent on making this Freya work, though we have seen Vote make some waves on this pick in the past.
Look, Freya, I think, is in a very good spot right now. You've got decent level 2 opportunities if you're able to establish pressure, to apply poke just like this, and with how her pulse works nowadays, the clear is very good.
Ooh, Vote forced into the beads after being sent back by Cyclone Spin. And so already, look, the name of the game, we always say, hey, shut down the Freya early, just keep jumping on her. You're not super thrilled if you're Vote and you've already had to burn your beads about a minute into this laning phase. You get some of that cooldown back as Layers continues to farm up, but now maybe susceptible.
Yeah, and I'm thinking Layers should probably just rotate over like soon. The beads being down for 2 entire minutes, you really only need to get that leap online for Layers. The second he's got that, the heroic advance, it's so easy to close gap on a Freya. As she starts to get a couple more items and has a little bit more movement speed thanks to those rings, it's going to become more difficult for this Gilgamesh. So the sooner you can get Layers over to the left side of the map, the better for the Tartarus Titans. The Oni Warriors will be able to have some sustain in that dual lane. Neilma already getting Vote back to full HP with this Yemoja pick. It's essentially Neilma's job. It's protect the president, and the president's name is Vote.
Yeah, Neil very strong on this Yemoja. Surprised it got let through, to be honest. The Yemoja ban has been all of the rage here over the last couple weeks of the SPL. Mike, of course, gets a look at Yemoja in our first game of our previous set. So keep your eyes on that Gilgamesh hovering around mid right now. Paul needs a little extra help with some of that wave clear over in mid. Now the Tartarus Titans, Miff, a team that have not shied away from playing this Cthulhu in the past, usually pairing it with the Morgan. You get these massive late game team fights. And unfortunately, maybe laning phase not fantastic against Bologna as Kivo Fred is rotated over. Blue buff dropped by the Oni Warriors. Saad is just going to have to watch that go down, but there's a tether out. And Saad doesn't have beads. There's a drop kick through from Layers, but it stuns, not the priority target. Blue buff down, but SOT able to stay alive.
That was nearly a perfect situation for Layers. He's able to line that up just a little bit better. That's drop kicking the tower every single time. There's no beads, no CC immunity for Cubo Fred. Even if he connects with Nika not having the ultimate just yet, either target would have been ideal. Just not the greatest placement of the drop kick. Getting him against that wall, sure, you land the stun, but towers in 9-5 onward have been doing a whole lot of damage. That very likely could have been first blood as a return for that blue buff invade. Expect to see that blue buff invade a lot, by the way. That has always been the answer to Cthulhu, and nothing has changed except for Cthulhu's build, now with Conduit Gem getting a buff.
Yeah, what is that all about?
He's got a little bit better clear. Conduit Gem is legitimately a very strong item nowadays, which I thought would have alleviated some of that invade potential for the Oni Warriors, but clearly Nika on this Bologna is still able to establish pressure.
Now the question ends up being, how do you deal with a Cthulhu later on in the game? Like, building kin-size able characters?
Freya's got it.
All right, so that's your answer. Dardes can also build into kin size at some point if you want. But you think just Freya's good enough?
Yes. Freya's damage in the late game is obscene, especially with this ring build. If you want to, you can look towards Nimble Rod as well. Freya used to be the OG put you on a timer god.
Awkward for Cyclone Spin. Just trying to farm up the Harpies. And actually, Vote and Neilma will drop the attempt altogether. Just Aurora on this side of the map, but not knowing exactly where Layers is on that Gilgamesh. Maybe don't want to overextend on a fight. So Vote speeds were down, never ended up getting punished by the Titans. Goes back up now, and Solo or Troll will pop the ultimate, simply to clear the last bit of a wave, I assume, and he'll have to go back. So another blue buff should be quietly over to Nika. Layers is kind of making his way over, and a teleport through. Could be close. Cubo Fred is here as well. Blue buff gets dropped yet again by the Oni Warriors, and Sada's going to have to let another one go by the wayside.
SOT no ultimate, so there's very little chase potential here. Cubo Fred could look for the turnaround, but Layers has finally joined the fight.
Ooh, drop kick onto a minion. So both teams probably disengaging from this point on. Sada's fallen just a bit behind here. Gets Breastplate of Valor first and foremost. That'll help keep the health bar a bit higher up in that lane, but Blue Buff Secure has been the name of the game over the last 2 rotations, and Sada's 0 for 2 on that. You'd love to steal away Nika's, but seems to be a bit of a coin flip here, and Blue Buff does indeed again get dropped down. But I admire the attempt, Myth. At some point, you gotta have a say in whether or not your Blue Buffs are getting taken away, and Sada at least throws out the idea.
Yeah, Sada goes for a very low-risk play there as well. You know Nika hasn't made his way back to base just yet, so his damage output isn't incredibly high. Even without the ultimate, the Descent into Madness, SOT should have been able to walk out of that regardless with the Breastplate of Valor already finished up. So I like the attempt, and it was close. After knocking away both Cubo Fred and Nika with that dash CC, slight opportunity to steal away the blue buff, but not quite able to connect onto it. Just unfortunate back timing from SOT, who's forced to TP in to his own tier 2 tower and an attempted defense of his own blue. Layers a little bit slow on the rotation as well. And the Oni Warriors are going to keep that up, and that's a byproduct of their draft. They want to keep pressure on the right side of the map so that the Tartarus Titans are distracted. They're not thinking about Vote, who is the looming threat in this match.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot about Vote over here. We're already at the point where the supports are rotating out of lane, and Vote just because normally at this point in the game with traditional hunters,
that's a weird build for Vote.
You're leaving them at 6 or 7, and then they just farm up to 20. Ring of Hecate first overall, though, Myth, maybe not what you expected.
Yeah, generally it's Hastened Ring in that first slot, which really boosts Freya's boxing potential. You're still getting decent movement speed, but Ring of Hecate going to help out a fair deal with Sustain. So I suppose Vote worried about the poke potential of Cyclone Spin.
Cubo Fred drop kicked against the empty Pyromancer pit. Has Lord of the Afterlife, but don't want to go too far into the Oni Warrior side of the jungle without knowing exactly where the rotations, the counter rotations are through from. Should be, barring a miracle steal from Nika, which there won't be, the first blue buff in a minute that goes over to SOT. Hasn't fallen that far behind, just the 1 level. First couple of items being completed across the map now. Shogun's Kusari for Nika. Pretty typical early item on the Bellona. And then when you pair it with Golden Blade Osiris, we'll see how the rest of that build rolls through. Dardes, who's of course going to love the extra attack speed, and Vote. Seems like a pretty simple first item.
It is, but you're sacrificing some defense aura. Neilma going towards Spirit Robe in that first slot. Very concerned about the CC core of the Tartarus Titans, and why wouldn't he be? Drop kick, stun from Paul, abduct from Aurora, even the kick in from Cyclone Spin, all going to proc that passive, giving him additional mitigations every single time he's connected with by hard CC. So yeah, maybe a little bit of selfish play from Neilma early on, but certainly going to keep him alive in the majority of these engagements. And if your entire strategy is to get to the late game, which I have to be assuming is the strategy for a double hunter composition, Freya and Shibalanke, that's one way to do it. Remove that early game pressure.
Layers maybe needed to hit that drop kick. Nika 2 levels ahead, and Layers half on both HP and mana. We'll be able to back off just fine. Vote has fallen a bit by a bit, I mean literally a bit. Takes over to level 9, just shy of the time that Cyclone Spin was able to get there, and has an extra few minions. So about as even as you get over in the duo lane. Not to say, you know, absolutely going to be good scaling. No follow-up on the Abduct of the Darda. It's going to be great scaling for Vote. But Cyclone Spin as well. I mean, once you get the Transcendence, more of that ability-based build online. So strong at melting backliners. Red buff invaded. Layers jumps right into the awaiting arms of Cubo Fred, but a Scarab's Blessing out of the River's Rebuke keeps First Blood at bay, but now Paul alone and no circle of protection to help him out this time. Vote, the worst possible person on the Oni Warriors to get that kill if you're the Titans, gets it. Now the Freya snags First Blood.
First Blood bounty is going to come up massive for this Freya, who had already had 1,500 gold in hand before that fight, so now 2,000, can probably finish up that ring the second that he's able to head back to base, as SOT is successful in defending yet another one of his blue buffs. Neilma, though, might need some help here.
Yeah, Cyclone Spin does some good damage. Layers on the reinitiation. Drop kick, yes please. Titans
Watch Vote.
are able to answer back. Cyclone Spin down to half HP. Rotation in.
Whoa!
Oh, triple loop! That's unreal from Vote. Sends the Titans up, crash back down into a kill. A second for Vote in this game. Aurora surely crumbles, and it's Cubo Fred who benefits, but all of this brought to you by the Freya. And what a fight from the Oni Warriors.
Man, Vote just has it so simple there. Rotates in, everybody's grouped up on his guy, so it's an easy pickup there. And then the damage output. Vote's not even dedicating his ultimate to these fights. He's not concerned about finishing off these kills. It's about safety and farming, and so far he's been handed a great start to this match. 10 minutes in, you're Freya 2-0-1. That's a tough hill to climb back up for the Tartarus Titans. If you're a Titans fan, you're hoping Layers shows up over there to do something to this Freya.
Because I'm really trying to think, Miff, because we have seen Freya a few times over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if I've yet seen the full standout carry performance of a Freya. I feel like it's normally been in one of the multiple ADC style of compositions. Granted, the Oni Warriors have one here as well. But when we saw it earlier, it was in the triple ADC plus carry style jungler for the Dragons as well. This is maybe, in my memory, the first real opportunity for Freya to get up and running and take a game over. And of course it's Vote who's in that position. Tartarus Titans, though, realize there's an opening, grab themselves the Pyromancer, and there's no answer from the Oni Warriors on the Gold Fury. So a small trickle of gold, but an objective nonetheless back to the Titans.
I wonder if the Warriors are assuming that Paul had used Circle Protection on that. I mean, that's the gameplay for ESET, is always getting to these objectives as early as possible. Your confirmation so high, the ability to just have damage mitigation as well means you don't have to concern yourself with these stronger neutrals in 9-5 onward. Sneaka yet again approaches the blue buff and is successful in the invade. So far 11 minutes in, only 3 blues going to SOT.
Paul dropped Circle of Protection in what was a 1v1, but Aurora close enough by that the Scarab's Blessing would have made a difference. Dardos just has to spin away, holds onto the beads, just fine. Second item, Executioner for the mid lane, Xbalanque. Already has Transcendence completely stacked up. We've seen Executioners in some of these Golden Blade builds out of the jungle. Lair stunned. Kivo Fred, maybe follow up on Neomod's Riptide, but no, not in a 3 versus 2. Darda's at a pretty strong spot here, Miff. You get fully stacked Transcendence into the Executioners, maybe be able to fight around this mid lane a bit more.
Yeah, every time Dardas connects to those auto attacks, it's going to empower Kivo Fred, make him a little bit more effective in the fight as well. Executioner has been coined as the unselfish item, right? You're giving everybody a little bit more
of course,
damage in some of these team fights. But so far, Dardas has not been incredibly active in the engagement. Sure, he's got 3 of the 3 kills assisted in, but I believe that's the ultimate. The Darkest of Nights that's getting him those assists. So fighting around Dardas might be an option. Fighting around the Gold Fury, not one I was expecting, but certainly a great option with nobody here from the Tartarus Titans.
Yeah, no option for the Titans to be over here on left. As a lot of the player damage that Dardas has been able to do has been chunk damage onto Paul throughout this laning phase. But Layers doesn't want to let this Fury go quietly, sends a blink and drop kick towards the Oni Warriors. But nothing to be had there. And finally, Sot gets the better of Nika, drops the blue buff. This one empowered, and is able to grab that. So at least something going the Cthulhu's way as of late. But Nika continuing to scale up, get some good attack speed items online, shotguns, plus the Berserker shield. And Nika scaling up just fine. And I'm interested really in both of these players, because how dynamic has Sot been for this Titans team, and Nika, of course, for this Oni Warriors team. And 2 solo laners on 2, albeit differently, playmaking styles of solo laners. I think there could be some waves come rotation time.
I'm glad that you bring up both SOT and Nika, because these are both players that I would consider highly aggressive laners. These guys want to throw around their mechanics to set up the plays, but Cthulhu doesn't necessarily fit that style.
Roar gets riptided back a couple of times to make it 3. As the tier 1 tower does end up going down. Layers on a rotation, and Neoma plucked back. Has ultimate and a full health bar. Layers can't quite say the same, down to half.
Wow.
Stun out from Neoma. River's Rebuke is up as well. Aurora caught in place, but a Circle of Protection is down. Provides some sustain. Layers is able to make it out alive. Watch out as Vote is rotating in behind the left of this fight. SOT goes big on the backside, but now Vote can melt down the damage, and he does. Forces Paul out of the back line of this fight. Now Valkyrie's Discretion sends some damage towards Layers, who also has to leave. Sot is doing his best. Then he has zoned out 4 members of the Oni Warriors, and he has done it effectively. Cyclone Spin remains at full HP. Big takeaway is tier 1 tower goes down, but nothing else happens.
Man, did you see the damage output from Vote already with this Hasten Ring finished up, the Hekate as well? Just watch him. Even if he lands only 1 auto attack, the resustain is high.
Yeah, it's chunking down onto Aurora. Centaurus flies from Cyclone Spin. Not far enough in the ability-based build from Cyclone to shred down those targets, but what a read from Vote. Oh, and then the Riptide on the back end forces out the Scarab's Blessing. Gotta be burst damage on the back end here, but not enough. Just enough mana for Aurora to dash away, keep himself on the map. That'll mean a purple buff invade, and it is successful, but close by the Oni Warriors. Neilma picks it up, and the Warriors head out.
I've been noticing a bit of a difference in the junglers this time around as well. Cubo Fred has been active on the map. He's always there for the team fight. It feels like Layers is playing catch-up. He's trying to get to the engagements. He's trying to react to this aggressive playstyle from the Oni Warriors, and so far has been a little bit slow on the uptake. But as of now, seems he's gotten a bit lucky with his quest items. Spiked Gauntlet picked up. He's already got the Hydra Star, so good damage
Weak
infusion.
little fork.
He's got a lot of power here. I mean, sure, it's a gross little tiny fork that looks like it belongs in a drink at a beach, but still does do a good bit, has a good deal of stats on that item. With stone cutting as well, he's survivable. He's 2 levels down, though, and that's going to be very difficult to play into,
right,
considering all the defenses Cubo Fred has just built into his kit. The tether, making him so hard to deal with, the passive as well. Layers has to choose his spots more often, and even though we don't have any dedicated defense item for Cubo Fred, Cubo's allowed to act as that initiator.
No. Man, that is a Layers plus SOT against Nika, and Nika is able to win the blue buff trade. So again, SOT's blue buff drops down. So Pyromancer gets pulled and confirmed from the Oni Warriors. I was about to say, the right side of the map looks fantastic for the Oni Warriors to fight into right now. You got this 2-level lead for Nika, 2-level lead for Cubo Fred. And the only reason I stopped myself is because really everywhere on the map right now is ahead for the Oni Warriors. You got a level in mid, granted a level down as Aurora is above Neilma. And then a level and a half or so, Vote is over Cyclone Spin. Feels like anywhere the Oni Warriors want to group up and sort of be around one another could be an effective battleground. But these are the types of moments where the Oni Warriors of the past have let things slip. There's no Fury on the map. There's no Pyromancer on the map. Sometimes searching for plays that aren't necessarily there, but it does seem like the team has closed up some of that gap. So I'm interested in where the Oni Warriors choose to go over the next 45 seconds or so.
Because after those 45 seconds, Gold Fury's back
Gold
up,
Fury's
but that's
up, right.
exactly where they're going to be headed. Purple buff seems to be the call. Layers blinks in, maybe doesn't know there's 4.
Yeah, this is a 4 versus 2, my friends. Paul is going to rotate in from mid, but Aurora sent the Scarab's Blessing elsewhere, so at least Layers survives, but Aurora will not.
Vote.
Spirit Ball nearly stuns onto Vote, who does not have the beads, but does have the ultimate, but holding on to it for the time being. Now the Valkyrie's discretion is up, but Vote will crash down eventually, and SOT will finally clean up a kill onto the Freya. But now it might be disengaged time from the Tartarus Titans. Nika just making his way over from the solo lane, and Eagles Rally still awaits around the corner should the Oni Warriors want to dive. And Nika does. Layer a bit split on the side of this fight. A dropkick sends one against the wall, but a nice silence on the Dispel Magic. Slows down the Oni Warriors. Far from worst case scenario for the Titans. Ends up being a 1 for none, and the Titans lose purple, might lose Fury, but at least pick up a kill.
I don't think the Titans can stick around. Nobody died, but plenty of TKOs from the Oni Warriors should net them the space required to pick up Primal Fury for themselves. And the difference maker in that team fight, again, is SOT separating the engagement. That Descent into Madness comes up massive for the Tartarus Titans, keeping 3 at bay, Vote separated, Cubo Fred essentially forced to act as a solo agent in the back line, and SOT essentially goes untouched that entire time. Thanks to having that teleport up first, he gets there probably about 20 seconds before Nika does. But even then, the lead already established by the Oni Warriors keeps a 4 versus 5 even in the fight. Aurora falls down early on, to be sure, but considering all the resources you'd used on this Khepri, who hasn't even ticked over to level 12 just yet, I think it's worth stating that the Tartarus Titans had a significant advantage state in that engagement. But once Nika rotates through, the fight just ends.
Miff, do you think there's a bit of a timer on SOT here? Because you figured that Vote alone would be enough to shred down the health bar of this Cthulhu at points. Most recent item completed for both Cubo Fred and Dardes is a kin size, and so you're going to have Freya swinging away as the game goes on. And Dardes is going to be hitting with the kin size on that big health bar, and Cubo Fred will be as well. And so do you think there might be a timer on Sot and how effective he can be in zoning out? I'll let you think about it. Is Cubo Fred the one being jumped on, has to Lord of the Afterlife away. And that should be the end of that.
I think that SOT is going to be very choosy with his ultimates. If he's lined up against any 2 of those kin size users or Freya's there, he's going to really struggle to apply his damage. But if they fight around this Khepri, the Scarab's Blessing, if everybody's on that single target, you're getting a lot of value from Khepri's ultimate. Same with Paul. If you're not utilizing Circle Protection for team fights, for objectives, keeping your Cthulhu alive is just great.
That's actually a really nice Riptide from Neilma. It got rooted in place. And as Aurora tried to dash in, the Riptide sent Aurora right back. SOT made it around. The Titans, not for a lack of trying, just the payoff hasn't quite been there, and the Oni Warriors, with 2 more kills than the Titans have a pretty massive gold lead going into the next stage of this game, 7,500 or so, and then 9,000 in the experience department. So you have to start considering Fire Giant here, especially when you consider the sheer damage output that the Oni Warriors are going to have. And that's got to be an awkward spot for the Titans. You know, they didn't have the ability to fight around the Fury because they got chunked low. I don't know if you're taking a team fight around the Pyro. You might have to step up Myth around this Fire Giant, though.
It's a risky Fire Giant call for the Oni Warriors. Sure, they've got the damage for it, but no confirmation. Not a single one of them has got the massive burst that you need to take away from even a Spirit Ball from Paul. That is probably one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game, barring Ultimate. Centaurus is a great steal tool. Just walk up, instant pop circle protection over a wall. Paul's got great steal potential there as well. So the Oni Warriors, although having the strength to do Fire Giant, need to find the opportunity as well.
Right.
A pick on a Paul would go a long way, or even Cyclone Spin, but if you're only killing a Roar or Lairs or SOT, I'm not even sure that that's enough for the Oni Warriors to feel confident in their ability to take the largest neutral objective.
I wonder where some of these shell upgrades go as well for the Oni Warriors. You know, every once in a while you'll see a carry pick up a shell. The other one's got Aegis. It is shells for Dardes, Neoma, and Vote. So upgrades later on in the game will be pretty impactful for those 3 here as well. Just wanting to get that damage off. Add a little bit of extra shielding in as well. So the Titans, I think, to your point, Myth, have the ability to slow play around some of these objectives, keep the steal on the map, and that'll give the Oni Warriors a bit of pause as far as immediately pulling. But it's not like the slowed down version of this game going much better. A purple buff gets invaded, confirmed by Vote, who's now at level 19 to Cyclone Spin 17. Level 20 reached prior to 20 minutes, or just after 20 minutes rather, by Nika, who's well underway in that build. So looking for the fight have to be the Oni Warriors. Pyromancer's up. Titans will slowly rotate towards this side of the map, but ward coverage down. An unfortunate Riptide placement for Lairs kind of reveals them around that corner there. And quiet Pyromancer over to the Warriors.
We've seen Nika go for this Death's Embrace build pretty often in the past, and when you're able to do this on Bellona, it essentially gives you the ability to indefinitely tank Fire Giant. Between Scourge and the passive Death's Embrace, every single auto attack giving you a percentage of your own HP back to you, means that you could just hold on to this objective, and that puts a lot of threat on the Tartarus Titans.
Wow.
They may not have vision on the objective itself, but they could see the effects.
And Fire Giant starting to burn down pretty quickly here. Cyclone Spin is going to stick on the left side of the map. And I don't think there will be an answer here. There won't. The Oni Warriors simply zone the Tartarus Titans out of range. Dardes drops the lights. And that is simple. Not quite what I was expecting. And a quiet, drama-less Fire Giant to the Oni Warriors at 22 minutes.
It's a clean call from the Warriors. They realize, hey, Cyclone Spin's on the other side of the map. That's one of their best steal potential gods. Let's just pull it out. Nika, realizing that it's really only SOT around, says, let's just finish it off. And now the Oni Warriors continuing their siege.
And Sada's in mid. Cyclone just got back. So a Fire Giant and a Phoenix go down with next to no pushback. But now Paul wants to have an answer. Lairs gets jumped on by Nika. And Nika is simply walking at 3 members of the Titans. Feels like just a bit slow on the draw, or the Titans there. They lose the fire, and then a very quick right side Phoenix goes down.
Yeah, the Tartarus Titans trying their best to, I suppose, generate threat on the map. We'll put Cyclone in duo. We'll put SOT in mid, and then somebody's going to have to rotate to stop these pushes. And the only way to say, we've got enough of a lead that I don't care if you get a tier 1 or a tier 2.
Race you, sure.
If we get a Phoenix, that's great for us.
Tier 2 tower should go down here quickly. The Titans will have to watch it happen. Nika gets silenced, but avoids the stun. There's a Gold Fury up on the map, as if the Oni Warriors need more. They're 11,000 ahead, and even worse in the experience department for the Tartarus Titans. And has, again, been a very low... We are 6 kills into a game at 23 minutes. And this is all just passively built up. Think of the number of blue buff steals we've had, purple buff steals we've had. There's just passive buildup. Just pressure, simple pressure on the map for the Oni Warriors. I think we are getting close to critical mass on this fray if we haven't already gotten there.
Oh, we're there.
3K plus for a couple members of the Oni Warriors, and a whole lot of time to play with on the Fire Giant buff.
We haven't seen the Tartarus Titans grouped as 5 since that defense on the left side of the map where SOT teleports in a little bit sooner than Nika. Yeah. Ever since then, it's been conflict averse from the Tartarus Titans. Cyclone Spin lines up against Vote a couple of times, but Vote stealing the purple buff without even having to fight for it. Fire Giants going down. The Tartarus Titans are across the map trying their best to farm up. And I suppose that has to be the call, because if you look at each individual member of the Tartarus Titans, they're not winning their respective 1v1s. Nika 1v1s SOT, Cubo Fred's winning up against Layers. Dardes and Paul, for the most part, unless Paul's landing the combo immediately, probably goes the way of Dardes. So if everybody's establishing pressure wherever they are in a 1v1, there's not many fight back potential opportunities for the Tartarus Titans.
Unless the Oni Warriors get caught out. And Cubo Fred was in an awkward spot, but able to use the ultimate to leap out. Winds of Shamash also used by Layers. And again, could you delay the backs here from the Titans? Looks like they'll be able to get inside their base, maybe put up a defense here, but you are going to keep Paul out of the fight. Left side Phoenix is going to take a little bit of damage. Neomod chunked down, but so is SOT on a Riptide in from Neomod, who has been on point with the Emoja CC here in this game. 58 seconds remaining on the Fire Giant buff. Everyone has their ultimates outside of the junglers. Still waiting on beads is Cubo Fred. Bracer down for Aurora. Layers also missing the beads. Good whoop onto Aurora, but healthy target that's going to take some time, you thought, to burn through. The left side Phoenix now finally being engaged on. And an ultimate from Dardes, enough to close that door. Right side and left side Phoenix is both gone. Leaves just the mid for the Oni Warriors.
The Oni Warriors backline is just dealing too much damage. The Tartarus Titans frontline looks like wet paper. SOT or Aurora lines up against any of these magical hunters or hunters, and they're just getting eviscerated. The Oni Warriors can slow play these sieges, just standing on the Phoenix line, throwing out auto attacks, saying, hey, if you step up, you're probably going to lose half your HP. If you eat a Riptide, you might lose a little bit more, or even potentially your life. Aurora, what was it, 4, 5 stray auto attacks from Vote? He's upwards of like 2 auto attacks a second, by the way.
Right.
Takes out 50% of his HP. What does that tell Aurora for the next team fight? Oh, I'm not allowed to use my Abduct unless I'm ready to die. Unless I'm using Scare's Blessing on myself. Just really hard situation now for the Tartarus Titans. You may have been right. You knocked on some truth earlier. The best fight potential for the Tartarus Titans is a gank. You got to get 2v1s, 3v1s, and even then, the resources of the Oni Warriors have not been under threat. Look at their relics. Look at their ultimate cooldowns.
Right.
All of them incredibly fine. All of them healthy. Might as well just regroup, get ready for this next Fire Giant, start your siege up again. Enhanced minion waves working down the right side of the map. Might take out that weakened right side Phoenix. Left Phoenix, the hardest to defend alongside the Fire Giant, down for a good while. At least the Tartarus Titans able to push that up closer to halfway through the map. But if Nika's over there, he should be able to make short work of the not enhanced minion waves.
Right.
The Oni Warriors in a very good winning position here.
Yeah, Miff, it's not often you see a Phoenix Siege go down. And not only no kills happen, but only one ultimate gets used, and it's Dardes to just force out the Tartarus Titans. And so if we aren't putting up a hard defense around the right side Phoenix, we kind of soft defend, again, because of just the immense damage that the Oni Warriors have around left. I don't know if you're putting up much of a defense around this Fire Giant. I think the positioning of the Titans tells you all you need to know, and it's that the Warriors are going to get this one pretty quietly as well. Got to draw the line somewhere. Maybe it's in the Titan room.
So in 9-5 onward, even if the Tartarus Titans win a team fight cleanly here, 4-0 or something along those lines, it's so difficult to work through all these towers, meaning that the Oni Warriors could slow play it and start to asphyxiate the map, take away the Phoenixes slowly, don't give up any opportunities, and take the low-risk play, and the Tartarus Titans will be strangled out. So that puts a lot of threat on the Titans, and that makes you think, well, what's the way back in? Good offense is a great defense. I think you have to hope that a downtown stun from Paul or Cyclone Spin with a max range Centaur is able to poke out one of these priority targets. And then it has to be an all-in engagement.
Yep.
Rally behind SOT and hope that he's got enough CC to buy time for the rest of your front line to close that gap.
Yeah, you're right, Miff, especially about the backline damage. Top damage in the game are both Dardes and Vote, and by a hefty margin. SOT 4,000 behind Nika. A lot of that throughout the laning phase. And of course, Atri has done a decent job in some of these team fights earlier on in the game. But now that the itemization is caught up, it's been difficult for this Cthulhu to have that impact. Right side Phoenix being looked at, but so is mid. You're going to have fire minions pouring down the left side into the Titan room. Do the Titans feel like they need to go back? Can you defend your Phoenixes? It's a game of chess that has now been brought to the doorstep of the Titans as right side Phoenix gets melted through by just a couple auto attacks from Dardes and Vote. So Nika and Cubo Fred, the ones putting threat on mid. As it is indeed Layers who goes back, defends that Titan under the soon-to-be respawning left side fire wave.
So it's all about slowing down the game state for the Oni Warriors. They can reuse all the sustain in their builds, or maybe
Nika's
a fight
low.
in mid. Nika
Whoa!
drop real low.
What was that? Was that circle of protection that detonated? Nika, his health bar
But he lives.
just goes down so fast. He is going to sustain up just a bit here. Has Fire Giant and the rest of his team close by. Has teleport as well to go back, resustain, teleport into this fight. Is left side Phoenix gone? Or right side rather, Phoenix gone. Left side maybe soon to be gone, but an ultimate out from Cuvo Fred. Can just usher in these fire minions. Now is maybe the time to fight. If you're the Tartarus Titans, Nika has indeed reinitiated on this fight with his teleport. Float up into the Valkyrie's discretion. Left side Phoenix dealt with by Cuvo Fred. Drop kick back, and it's onto a great target. Vote.
He's still alive?
No! Vote lives, though, as the shell saves his life, but Cyclone Spin from downtown fixes that quickly. The Titans have found a priority target, but they have lost nearly all 3 of their Phoenixes so far. Nika does not want to hang around. Neither does Dardes. It's a pull back in by SOT, but Dardes trying to disengage. Has the cleave damage. Eagles rally back in from Nika, but Dardes is gone. The carries out of this fight for the Oni Warriors. It's the best looking chance for the Tartarus Titans as we've seen in a minute, and it looks like it will pay off. You have lost 2.99 of your Phoenixes. The Oni Warriors lose 3 priority members, soon to be 4, and the Titans put up a big defense.
Unfortunately, it might be a Caster's Curse situation. 4 for 0 trade, and what are the Tartarus Titans able to do with this time?
Wow.
Maybe pick a Primal Fury up, potentially a tier 1 tower. Maybe should have been defending your Phoenix because Cuvo Fred's there.
Abduct onto Cuvo Fred. Just needs a couple autos. Lord of the Afterlife up.
Has he got it?
He was accidentally autoing a couple minions. He does get it, so all 3 Phoenixes down now on the Tartarus Titans side of the map. The other few members of the Titans just dealing with the Fury. This is just
Still
obnoxious.
alive.
He is just alive. There you go. Paul able to deal some big damage. And Paul has really climbed up the damage charts here as of late. Because remember, think back to that last fight. It was Vote and Dardes at the top of the player damage charts by a hefty margin. The Titans have closed that gap up, and it's really Paul and Cyclone Spin who've been able to pour out the damage. Now, if you're the Warriors or their fans, I don't think you're hitting the alarm bells just yet. You love it if you're the Titans. It's a fight back in, but 3 Phoenixes down, half health on the Titan. Still a game of chess, as I like to say, for the Titans. Can you extend out of your base? Can you defend this Fire Giant? You're at least feeling a bit better about your defense after that.
From here on out, every single fight the Tartarus Titans take is going to be outside of their base.
Yeah, gotta be.
And likely without a Phoenix as well. We're about 40 seconds away from the Fire Giant respawning, and the Oni Warriors will be trying to take that down first. But the Tartarus Titans cannot allow anybody from the Oni Warriors into that base. Half HP Titan. It's only going to be a couple auto attacks to finish it up.
Trebuchet does just spawn for the Warriors, so maybe a small moment. Looks like we'll get started by Cuvo Fred. So the Trebuchet is going to start its long journey down the left side of the map. And so you're really starting to approach that territory of if the Warriors can just delay out around this Fire Giant enough, somebody's going to have to go back. Sot does have teleport. Will clear this wave of fire minions, but there are going to be so many more with a Trebuchet walking down as well. Tough calls here for the Tartarus Titans as the Fire Giant is about to respawn. And it looks like the Titans might slow play. Good ward coverage here for both teams. None of this will be by surprise.
This is the first time the Tartarus Titans have shown this much presence around the Fire Giant. It's about finding the priority targets.
Sot has teleported in behind this entire fight, so watch out for the Cthulhu. I'm not sure the Warriors know it's there, but Aurora has been left alone. In the meantime, you're going to be fighting without Scarab's Blessing. And a River's Rebuke traps 3. It's huge from
Massive
the Oni
ult.
Warriors. And Cuvo Fred jumps back in. Lord of the Afterlife hits 3. And the Tartarus Titans, they're going to lose at least 3. 1 answered back by Layers. Sot being melted through. 1 fight does not a comeback make. And the Oni Warriors shut down 4. And they're going to win game number 1.
A hard decision to make for the Tartarus Titans, but they have to fight there. If another Fire Giant goes the way of the Oni Warriors, it would have just been the game, especially with the Titan. As low HP as it was, Layers in a 1v4 has got some low HP targets, but
Bloodforge, it's going to do
tough.
some work. Give him the shielding, give him the resets, but with the amount of damage that the Oni Warriors have, there is no chance in the scaling. It was amongst us all game long in an 8-8 game, Miff. An 8-8 kill game is somehow still overwhelmingly in favor of the Oni Warriors. Outside of 1 comeback fight from the Titans around their Phoenix line, It just felt like the map was being played better by the Warriors that game.
And I think the discussion of that game has to come down to side lane pressure, right? It's Vote the entire time putting pressure onto the purple buff. It's Nika always on top of that blue buff. But when you look at the matchups, you'd expect Chiron to be generating the pressure in the dual lane. I mean, by rote, you can expect Cthulhu to fall at least a little bit behind, but maybe with some rotations, you can alleviate that pressure. Layers would only have one lane that he needed to worry about. But because of how the game started, First Blood goes over to Freya, another kill immediately afterward off the back of that triple banish early on, just gives you about nearly a 1,500 to 2,000 gold lead at around that 9-minute mark. And against a god that scales as hard as Freya and as quickly nowadays, not having to build those boots, well, it makes it hard to leverage your Chiron in the duo.
Yeah, you had Freya Shred, you had 2 Chin Sais on your team. The frontliners for the Titans didn't stand much of a chance if left unhelped. And the Oni Warriors are able to capitalize. Warriors pretty convincing here in Game 1 despite tied in kills by the end of it. Can the Titans bounce back? Send us to Game 3. Find out next.
Hey, wait, what did it win?
You win the respect.
You're telling me an alien wore this?
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, that was a good cut.
Messaging him to mute.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course, and I can probably watch a stream on the side.
Content's gonna look good. Pretty good, pretty good.
The correct answer to this one is Krang, but that's not an option.
I'll take Slash.
I like blue.
Slash. Look at that card art, man. Is it beautiful?
Slash.
I mean, that Slash skin is scary, to say the very least, so I'd have to go Slash on that.
And while I think Slash is cool, and I told you a story about how I could probably still find an action figure of Slash at my parents' house, I've got to say Shredder because he's got Bebop and Rocksteady behind him, and those are my boys.
Slash for sure. That looks much more brighter and going crazy.
It's got to be Slash. He just looks absolutely terrifying. And plus it's Kuzumbo, so yeah.
Super Shredder.
Shredder boy. Little turtle. The turtle one. The turtle. The Slash. The turtle.
Even though I'm a Raven fan, I think I'm getting pretty bad at the game these days. So a skin on Kuzumbo is a win from me. It's a Guardian, easy to play, just knock people around. I'll take that.
Okay, the Slash Kazembo skin looks like a nightmare. It looks sick. I love that one.
Super Shredder. Love that guy.
This is a tough one, man. Like, the Slash skin is so cool, and it's another good Kuzumbo skin. But I really am a big Raven fan, and like Shredder is like a TMNT classic for me. So I'm probably gonna go Super Shredder, but like it's a really tough coin toss.
Slash. Hands up. Done. Slash. Easy. Do you see that? Chef's kiss.
Welcome back to the Smite Pro League. Always fun seeing the this and that's that we come up with, all the different topics and whatnot, and some of them from even some of the old potential Prime skins that could come through. And talking about Prime, there's another Prime skin that we have out and available for you guys. The Happy Little Painter Jean-Qui is available, and the way that you can get it is by linking your Twitch accounts and having Prime and all that great stuff with your Smite account. So make sure to do that, so that way you can get your hands on one of the great Prime skins brought to our friends over by Prime Gaming. Thank you so much to Prime for coming back, or not coming back, but coming to us here in Season 9 of the SPL. Game number 1, a very convincing early game, but what do you got going over there?
Let's see, when it switches back, you'll see. That's where the crown is. And that's where you click to get all that content. It's right there.
Click it up in your upper right side of the screen in case for some reason, I don't know why you flipped it for any reason whatsoever not, but look for a little crown, grab that stuff. But game number 1, Oni Warriors, we derailed ourselves so quickly. Oni Warriors able to find a convincing early game out of there. You know, the dual lane pressure, it's something that you were talking about, bringing Chiron, maybe not the easiest guy to kill, but Khepri maybe a little bit more so, and that's where we did see the Oni Warriors find success. Saw some signs of life for the Tartarus Titans whenever it came to their mid-Phoenix defense, but that force fight around the Fire Giant just did not go their way, and the Warriors able to take game 1.
After what we saw earlier today, and specifically with the Freya, I didn't know what I was expecting. Admittedly, wasn't expecting anything too crazy from it, right? The fact that Vote gets, the first blood and then gets to continue that's maybe the biggest deal here, right? It's getting a lead and controlling a lead. Because like you said, like, is Khepri or Chiron, is that lane? Like, in my mind, Yemoja Freya should lose to that lane, but they get that first blood, which really sets them up. The buff to Freya obviously working in her benefit here, and then the kills kept on rolling in. And while, the Titans were able to find some good retaliation, I think the damage and the pressure, as Miffet said at the end of the cast, from the side lanes was just too much, too insurmountable from them, right? You got Nika with a very comfortable lead. Cthulhu late game team fights can be disruptive, but it obviously wasn't enough for them, especially when you have a Shibalanke that hit late game and a Freya that got off to a good start. Vote got a lot of items online. Look, only 2, 2, and 4, maybe not anything too crazy. 1, 2, and 5 there, for the Shibalanke, but like the damage numbers I have to imagine from them are going to be really good. Of course, Nika, I think, is going to skyrocket throughout a lot of this. And I think that as a team, we got to see some really nasty plays, highlights for Neil specifically, but like there was a really good wall towards the end, really, really phenomenal ult from him that really created the conversation, that control for that last FG fight that then ends up winning the game. What was that, like 30,000 almost damage that came out of the mid lane? So I think that through and through as a whole, what this team was able to accomplish with a draft that I actually think should have faltered is just wildly impressive. And I think the fact that they came out on top, regardless of that, is just a showcase of how this Warriors teams play. They're going to match whoever their opponent is, but they're always going to be slightly ahead.
And I think it kind of brings up one of the old school philosophies of things that we were asking in Season 8. How do you deal with the Hell? How do you deal with the Cthulhu? How do you deal with all this weird stuff that's been coming out that teams have been struggling with? And sometimes the common answer that we've seen from players, that we've just seen from play on field, is you play around that problem.
Yeah.
We can't really fight into a Cthulhu in the early game, so we're just going to play around the Cthulhu, not allow this Cthulhu to get into the midst of team fights, not allow him to get blue buffs. That way he can have some kind of level of impact in lane. And that's what the Oni Warriors did, is they were constantly on top of the blue buff, making sure that Sot wasn't able to get that level of experience, make sure he wasn't able to get that farm out for himself. And then by the time Sot did become able to join those team fights, teleporting in, there was already 2 kin size picked up by that point. So now all of that early pressure that you could have gotten gets mitigated out. We'll see how things pan out in game number 2. Picks and bans ready to go. And this time the Tartarus Titans are electing to take that second pick slot. And a lot of things up and available for these teams. But the Oni Warriors will continue to make sure that Ullr does not see the light of day.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this is going to change and what for the Titans, right? Nemesis, Chernobog were the other two alongside the AMC last game around. So like, where are you going to draw the line for yourselves? What do the Warriors value more than anything? I was wondering, like, does Cuvo really like the Mercury? And maybe you try to let that through. Because that's the glory of first pick, is trying to find that niche line that lets you scoop something up that's really strong for you while theoretically getting to take away a lot that's powerful for them. But I think that it seems like both of these teams are electing to let a couple of those stronger picks that we saw last game through.
But also a couple of those strong picks to be banned away. Bologna by the Oni Warriors taken off, and Freya from the Tartarus Titans. So they're not going to allow Vote to have a run back in game number 2 after his performance in game number 1. Didn't pick up the most kills in that game. I believe you said it was only 2, 2, and 5 to close that one out, but still an immense amount of damage he was able to output once those late game team fights came through. Again, Tartarus Titans did hold out on a Phoenix defense, then were kind of forced into an awkward situation of now having to fight outside of the base, which is where they then began to struggle. So maybe for the Titans, finding something that can keep themselves sustained up and be able to fight back in these jungle matchups. Umoja, the last god banned away, but the Titans not going to let Neil have that one. That leaves Khepri open, but Khepri not going to be grabbed by the Warriors. Instead, it's Chernobog who gets let through and gets picked up right away.
I wasn't even thinking of the Khepri. I thought we were going to see a slaplock Nemesis for Cuvo. I thought immediately, someone that has been banned a hefty majority this week and last week and in general lately. And even, here's the secret, prior to being super meta, was really good for Cuvo Fred. So I think that's one that, the Chernobog really good. It's flexibility. It can go over to Vote pretty easily. It can go over to Nika, and it can work out in the solo lane. We've seen it a lot. Hell, it can get thrown in the mid lane. We've seen it a couple of times there. And so it has a little bit more of a wide variety of styles that can back it up. And even after, the top 3 here, you're still going to be missing out on which one is it going to be. But I was surprised because I think that Nemesis has treated them well. The only thing that's treated them even better has been that dodgy. So I'm not even going to be complaining too much about it. Again, I said this last week, I always felt like the Warriors were locking in the dodgy really early and kind of opening themselves, at least here, for bottom 3 picks to be something that can either easily counter her or at least easily deal with her. But that didn't bother Cuvo last week, so I can't imagine it being a bother this week.
Taking a look back at the history in the matchup last week against the Solar Scarabs, Cuvo Fred played this dodgy 3 times during that, went 8-4, 3-7, and 4-2. Still impressive slash lines. This 3-7 does kind of hurt. That was the one that they lost. Dardes ran to Morgan in 2 of those games that they had won, 8-5 and 6-1, and then the AMC was their one loss there. So these two, when they're able to get them together, have been finding great success up against teams
this is
like
going to
the
be
Scarabs.
another one of those Artio Umoja combos for a team that I have to get. Artio and Umoja, when the Leviathans got them anytime last year, it was a guaranteed win every time. I don't want to have to do that with another comp, man.
The good thing is
it's too much.
The good thing is you don't have to, because a few days prior to that, whenever they had to face against the Leviathans, that combo did lose. So it's not undefeated, but it's still dangerous to go up against.
So what is that? 2 out of 3 as of right now?
2 out of 3.
I've got a little wiggle room. If they start winning with it like every single week from here on out, then we're gonna have to start counting them.
At least as of what's shown on the most recent 6 that I can look up immediately, they're 2 and 3, or they're 2 and 1 with this comp so far with those 2 gods.
Nice.
It's pretty good.
That's still pretty good. I'll give them credit for it. Look, I think that, again, as a transformation, and specifically with the way, like, we highlighted Dardez's Morgan at the beginning of this
There's the spirit.
But I think that a lot of this was built on the strength that is Cuvo on this Daji. Last week, and we'll have to see if this continues into this week, but those chains were nuts. I mean, you're talking about a Daji that was going up on the Palau, and maybe not every single one, but like 95% of the chains that are getting thrown out were connecting. Granted, whether it's a pull, dependent on beads, CC, things like that, but it was still damage that he was able to get out there, and it was so consistent and happening so often that the Warriors were able to find the pulls. When you get Dardez in there in the mix, burning beads alongside him, someone's getting pulled and someone's going to die. So it is a deadly combo.
Well, the final 4 gods drafted for the Tartarus Titans, their last 2, Cucullin and Hell, and then Baron and Ardio on the opposite side. Now, I'll give you a moment to kind of look up the stat as far as Baron on Neil, because when an Ardio has typically been locked in as of recent, that Ardio has almost always gone over to the solo lane. But I can think back to a few seasons ago when Neil and Mike and players like that were running this Ardio in the support role. So maybe some potential flexibility based off of maybe at least past performances.
Yeah.
If Neil even has a Baron, because to my memory, I can't think of the last time I've seen Neil on Baron, if ever. But I do remember Neil on the days of Ardio. So while you look over to that one, and we look over the Titans, maybe even with this Hell locked in, talking about some of the sustain that was kind of struggling for them in those team fights when the late game came through. Well, now the Titans have that answer with this Hell.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm curious as to whether or not we're going to see a ton more Hell in the future, right? Like, we were starting to see a resurge today. Normally, Hell appears, and then some other healers start to follow, and then we find ourselves in a healing meta for a little bit, and then they get nerfed really hard, and then they disappear, and then literally nothing will change for the healers themselves. And suddenly they start coming back into the meta. They always crawl back in. I think right now, though, the conversation for healers is really built around the fact, one, I think stacking items were really good on Hell earlier when Vin was playing it. But I also think that there is that credit that is with everyone being a little more difficult to kill is the way to word it. They're tankier. They're harder to take down. The Hell and her healing ends up being a little bit more worthwhile. Now, to answer your other question, though, Baron, when it came down to it, at least for this year, has not been played by the Warriors, but Neil has played it twice. He has never won with it, and he has a 0.8 KDA. So if it's something that you're looking at long-term and trying to hang your hat on and be relaxed about, I don't think you can. I think Neil's going to have to put in some work here.
Yeah, so the Baron, we've been seeing a lot go to the support role because of gods like Ardio making their way to the solo lane. Maybe still a little bit of intrigue as to where those gods can kind of round themselves out there. Tartarus Titans, I think you're right to talk about hopefully, and maybe we won't see nearly as much Hell, just the amount of sustain that we saw in our set prior with the Bolts and the Dragons, tipping upwards of 30,000+. We'll have to see if the Oni Warriors, though, can close out game number 2 with a clean win, or can the Tartarus Titans take us to game number 3?
A low kill, high gold game for the Oni Warriors in game number 1. Can they repeat? Can they 2-0 the Titans and jumble up the standings, or can the Titans fight back like the undefeated kings they are? No, they're the Titans. Wrong word. Verbiage.
Would have been so cool if Twig was on the screen.
That would have been so perfect for me. Unlucky. Oni Warriors.
They play later this week. It's all right.
Actually, Myth. All right, so we got to get it out of the way before we spiral out of control, and we can actually cast this game. You should know that Dolphin won.
There was a poll?
There was a poll in chat, and it actually won by like a hefty margin. It was like 66%
Dude,
of the...
Smite Game chat is full of simps, man. We can't be letting them vote on our couple's name.
Yep. Who do you think wants us to have a couple's name more than...
More than what?
Than us, right?
More than us? Yeah. More than you.
You don't want to have a couple's name? We can be nothing, Myth. I'm fine with that.
Oh, no. No, it can't
you know what,
nothing.
Myth? We're done.
No, dude.
Up and out. Just kidding. Cubo Fred blinks in the mid lane here, and hits level 2 first. And I do think the jungle matchup continues to be exciting here in this set. Cubo Fred on the Daji, and the Death set it up pretty properly, where Cubo just seems so consistent on this pick. And then layers on the Nemesis now. high playmaking potential early on in this game, trying to match some of the pressure at level 5.
And this time around in the late game, Layers won't be nearly as ineffective in the 1v1 against Cuvo Fred. You've got the ability to immune that enhanced auto attack from Daji, great boxing potential. Because Nemesis is allowed to go down that Golden Blade tree, her clear should be able to outpace Cuvo throughout the early portions as well. So Layers might just be able to establish himself an XP lead if it's all about farming out of the jungle, and I think that might be the case when you have a Khepri and a Hell on your team. Late game team fights become very annoying, so that should likely be the goal of the Tartarus Titans.
Neilma knocked up and to the side, so it is Neil, as we assumed it would be, on the Baron. I don't think there's any world where you're taking Nika off Ardio. Nika is just too good on that pick. So I think flex be an option, but I don't think it was that highly likely. Neilma again abducted back. Have to be careful up against Aurora on Khepri. Feels like should be a comfortable pick for Aurora here in this game as well. Khepri, despite not hitting pay dirt quite as well earlier on, I think still has that potential. Darda is slowed. Stun onto Layers. Beads end up paying off pretty heavily there. Dardes will maintain a level lead, a slight XP lead here in mid, but now under a bit of pressure without the beads.
Yeah, Dardes is just trying his best to survive this early laning phase. Hell might be a late game slanted god, but her damage output in the early portions, nothing to be scoffed at. So, in the 1v1, expect Hell and expect Paul to be the aggressor for the most part. Morgan historically struggles with controlling that neutral farm. She doesn't have the strongest clear or boxing potential. So if you want the Oni Warriors getting the either right or left side camps, it's mainly up to Cuvo Fred, whichever one he elects to go towards. So keep your eyes on this Daji as far as farm is concerned. But we were talking about Layers and his ability to farm up a little bit earlier on. Showing some activity on the map already, and has already fallen about a half level down.
Yeah, that's pretty simple from Layers. You just walk in, get the slow, force the beads off of Dardes. Need to see more from Paul this game. The E-set looked fine later on, but something more active, the big burst damage, playmaking style, and I like that in the Hell. And then, of course, the sustain has to be a topic of conversation, a decent amount through the Hell, and so itemizing into anti-heal going to be important this game for the Oni Warriors. Some decent applicators of it, of course. You know, Cuvo Fred might like a Brawlers at some point here. So you wonder the level of priority the Oni Warriors start to put in that. Because we saw anti-heal maybe not prioritized as heavily earlier on today, and it definitely bit some opposing teams. You gotta have it when Paul is on this pick.
Yeah, I'm expecting Pestilence, Contagion, both great options for the front line. Nika in particular, probably looking towards those Aura anti-heal items. You already brought up the Brawler's Beat Stick for Cuvo Fred.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Darda's not really the best at getting Divine Ruin active, but the stats on that item might be enough that he looks towards it on his own. Neilma playing a non-standard front line means that he won't be able to go towards those Aura items himself, or even if he does, probably won't get the most effectiveness out of it, as Baron Zombie, for the most part, is sitting at max range unless he's channeling that ultimate on one guy. And then, you know, Vote's got the standard auto attack options, maybe something like a Toxic Blade or something along those lines.
What if it'll end up being Warlock Staff for Nika here? Been very popular amongst mages in mid. And not sure what else Nika would want to go for, but see what he chooses to buy on his back. Cuvo Fred over to solo, and goodbye SOT. That's simple for Nika and Cuvo Fred. Cuvo Fred, blink, dash, first blood. And so the Daji hits its mark early, and Sot hadn't gone back, and Sot now picks up beads. Again, not that beads would have made all the difference in the world, but ends up selecting beads. And Cuvo Fred off to a good start for the Oni Warriors.
Layers shows some presence near the blue buff, because he's gone for blink in that first slot, can't put up any form of defense. Palau still available to Cuvo Fred. Would have just been a death sentence for Layers, so instead has to reset himself back to neutral, and the Oni Warriors Soul Laner gets a pretty significant lead off of that. Pushes a wave into the tower, steals away the blue buff, gets that farm, gets his own farm here as well. You can leave Nika alone on an island, and he's going to be in a very good spot from here on out, and I believe it will be a Warlock Staff. But look at the build from SOT. Interesting. Runic Shield in that first slot, removing some of that magical power from anybody he's nearby, and an aura around him, a little bit of power for himself as well. But he's not getting the double dip on this item. Generally, it's, hey, it's a double physical, solo jungler, or maybe it's a double magical. So, might have a target on his back. Cuvo Fred could rotate over, have essentially unmitigated damage onto SOT, which is why I believe we see him go towards that beads. He's worried about that presence of the jungler.
got to be alarm bells then ringing for Kivo Fred that it's an option over the next couple of minutes to at least burn the beads off of SOT. Transcendence for Kivo Fred will get that stacking up alongside Nika. Of course, we mentioned the Warlock staff. Technically stacks for the Doomor, but not quite in the same vein for Dardes, who's on the Morgan.
Used to be a standard stacking item once upon a time.
Yeah, that was way before my time.
Yeah, and when you died, you lost half your stacks.
Oh,
it was
I hate
super
that.
cool, actually.
I hate that. I'd never have any stacks. Although I guess once you get one, you can never go down to 0, right? Unless you died with 1 stack, then.
But that's 0.5. You know, you're never getting back to 0. That's never happening.
Right, and so that's at least a win for me. I'd never go back to completely the beginning of stacking up that item. I imagine we'll see some double dodges throughout the team fighting phase. Strip the beads off with 1, set yourself up with either Kivo, Fred, or Dardes, and then knock him down with the other. Though I do believe the Titans have a good composition to fight back in here, though it has been slow going on the Answer's back. 700 or so gold in the lead are the Titans. Bit of a scrap over on the right side, blue buff. As an ultimate pulls in 1, Layers drops his ult over there as well. SOT gets taken low. Kivo Fred doing his best to back away as the Palau also used. Vote procs his ult.
Uh-oh.
Is he going to rotate in?
Ooh.
No, he won't. Thought SOT might have been in some trouble. Looks like blue buff successfully taken by the Warriors, but no kills.
Blink lost for Layers, Beads lost for SOT, so once Kivo Fred is able to rotate back through, might be able to put additional threat onto this Kakulin, and that seems to be the name of the game for the Oni Warriors. It's 2 now invades that have gone their way, and once this Artio is allowed to rotate out of the lane, she has got way more power than the Kakulin's got at this point, allowed to go towards this Bruiser item in this first slot. Everybody's scaling up now on the side of the Oni Warriors.
Oh no.
But Neilma isolated.
Could this be the answer back? Neil still does not have life of the party, but what about that transformation from Dardes? Delays out this fight a little bit longer. Transforms into the Nemesis, has damage for Paul. Scarab's blessing down. Can they wait it out for the time being? Yes, but Paul zooming away, and Nika buys his time. And Paul down now as Neilma will be able to escape. Layers will as well, but still a kill and more gold for the Oni Warriors in mid.
Paul loses his bead, so it becomes a little bit more simple to find that pull-in. Sure, he's got the cleanse available in the Hell kit, so Palau not guaranteed up against Paul in mid, but when there's 2 Palaus, one of them's bound to find its way home. So the Oni Warriors doing a great job establishing pace early on. I think they're concerned about that late game presence of the 5-on-5 engagement of the Tartarus Titans, so they have certainly upped their pace here. But maybe with that fight erupting when it does, forcing Kivo Fred back to base, it's going to be a lot more difficult for Nika to steal away this blue buff. 2 levels up, though, on an Artio. You might be able to do it on your own.
Yeah, I think Nika's feeling okay. Layers a bit low. And again, Warlock staff gives Nika more the bruisery damage potential. And won't, I believe, won't be able to steal away the blue buff, but at least being obnoxious and sends Kivo Fred and Neilma over towards the right side of the map. I like this kind of duo roam that Neil and Kivo Fred are throwing out. Life of the party to maybe pull one in. Palau to add some additional threat there as well. Oni Warriors playing a very proactive brand of Smite. But maybe to your point, Myth, is Vote trying to confirm his own purple buff here. Will auto-attack it, though it was close, and dashes away from Aurora. Though to your point, Myth, there is scale potential here from the Tartarus Titans. Far, far from a back-breaking lead for the Oni Warriors.
But it is gearing up to get to that point. We're about 15 seconds away from the Pyromancer spawning. The Oni Warriors have got nearly infinite pressure on the right side of the map, so you got to think they're favored in the Pyromancer fight itself. The Tartarus Titans, on the other hand, have shown a lot more presence towards that dual lane. Aurora has been hesitant to rotate all the way over to solo, whereas we've seen Neilma essentially acting as a secondary jungler, roaming with Kivo Fred.
Yep.
So maybe the Tartarus Titans have got an opportunity to start looking at gold themselves. Not that they've got the greatest burn potential. If Layers rotates through, it should go down in an all-right, timely manner, but you don't really have the greatest confirmation on the Tartarus Titans. Same can be said of the Oni Warriors, but the Warriors haven't really got the steal potential either, so I would like to see the Titans enforce a 5-on-5 engagement, utilize this composition to its full strengths, and that's when Paul and Aurora together, when you can be that sustained draft that's also got CC immunity afforded to you by your mid laner, also Scarab's Blessing as a safety net, could make it very frustrating for the Oni Warriors to finish off some of their kills or fights.
And if there's fighting happening on right, purple buff confirmed by the Oni Warriors. Cyclone Spin losing that trade pretty handily to Vote. If the fighting is happening over on the right side of the map and Vote can keep Cyclone Spin in lane, big advantage to the Oni Warriors with the Chernobog ultimate as well. Just get yourself one-man advantage if a big fight were to break out. Oracle's set up by the Tartarus Titans, so the Warriors won't, definitely not this early in the game, be able to pull that one quietly or confidently. Is doing his best to confirm his blue buff, which he does, is SOT, but takes the ultimate to push Nika back just a bit further. Haven't seen a lot of RDO, have seen Vote burning his beads, and this is another instant. Layers walks in, ultimate up from Vote. Where does he crash down? Gotta be somewhere close. Is he gonna have help though? Yes, he will, as Dardes and Neoma have rotated over from mid, and Aurora just being run down. Scarab's blessing there. Fred has gotten a kill onto Paul on the backside of this fight, and now the Oni Warriors can just run down their targets. No beads for Layers.
Wow.
And no chance for life. Fred a double kill, and the Dodge G hitting its mark.
I didn't even realize Dardes had transformed into Chernobog. I think just the additional shadows at the same time. I'm not even certain the Tartarus Titans realize it. Both dunked down at the exact same time. All of a sudden, there's a numbers advantage. Fred catches Paul on the rotation in. Just a beautiful team fight, well executed by the Oni Warriors, and the target selection at that. Just so nice. Trading off between Aurora and Layers, finishing off both kills, 4-0. Objective goes their way as well. This is a very different Oni Warriors. These guys have clearly come with a game plan, and they are executing on it.
Right, every once in a while, they hit this stride, and it was pretty often in Phase 1. And looking like a good start to Phase 2 for the Oni Warriors should this result hold. A win over the Titans, especially a 2-0 win over the Titans, would be a great stamp of approval for the Oni Warriors and a confidence vote from us as the Oni Warriors progress throughout this phase. Pyromancer stands. Vote's going to have to head back to base. There is a Trebuchet, that being said. Build up a little bit of pressure on the left side of the map whenever the Tartarus Titans want to use it. Pyromancer taken low here. Pyromancer confirmed by the Titans, but enough damage in the fight after the fact. As Aurora's used an early Scarab's Blessing here, he'll get pulled into life of the party. He'll scurry away as well. Scarab's Blessing gets procced, but this is exactly what we were worried about as far as numbers. Vote is able to ult over while Cyclone Spin running down the left side of the map. Layers desperately trying to escape, and he will be able to do so. But it was a kill in exchange for the Pyromancer and a whole lot of jungle farm for the Oni Warriors.
The entirety of the jungle, speed and blue taken, a kill onto Aurora. You got the Pyromancer, you allowed Cyclone Spin to farm up a bit on the opposite side of the map. Yeah. But I'm not certain this is where it ends. The Oni Warriors already have Minion Wave in the tower. Might be able to pick up a tier 1 for their efforts as well. That's a nice play from the Tartarus Titans. I think they have to go for that style of play of slowing down this onslaught from the Oni Warriors. So the Warriors been the one to take Pyromancer. This lead's really starting to get out of control. So Tartarus Titans right in the decision-making to take away the objective, but the timing of it really does favor the Warriors, and it's something you had brought up earlier. Every single fight that happens on the right side of the map is going to favor the Warriors because Vote can just get there. He's jumping into shadows every single time, and that's ignoring the fact that Nika is still playing with a 2-level lead. This is a stifling situation, but the Tartarus Titans still certainly in it, still have the potential to scale into this late game, and now with both neutral objectives down, have bought themselves some time to rest and just farm up.
That's what Paul needs, because Paul's got double stacking right now, Warlock Staff and Book of Thoth. Both of those items, of course, once fully stacked, give you a great power spike. So something Paul will look forward to is just being able to take a breather for a moment. 0-2 start for the Hell has been jumped on pretty consistently. As in stealth, won't be able to steal away that Greater Scorpion. Can look at some anti-heal items. The Oni Warriors prioritizing a couple. Brawler's Beat Stick for Fred we figured we would see. And then again, Dardes maybe not the best applier of Divine Ruin. Still good stats on that item. Cheap enough in that flat pen tree that makes some sense just to limit what Hell's able to do.
Significant power spike from Layers, who finally ticks over to level 12. Might be at a 2-level deficit, but Beads better late than never, can now start getting involved in these team fights with Fred or Dardes around. That CC not as effective, but still certainly with as much CC the Oni Warriors have got, might be able to find its way home.
Layers pulled into life of the party, uses those beads almost immediately upon leaving base with them. Purple buff dropped down by the Oni Warriors, and the Titans just kind of have to watch it happen. So Neil throws out his ult, Layers uses his beads. And I was going to say Nika uses teleport, which he did, but just to get back over to the right side of the map. So the scaling will continue for the Titans. Small moments, like I guess you just kind of have to concede your purple buff going down if you're not super confident in the fight. If you're the Titans, you're trying to buy your time, but you're now 4,000 gold behind. And it's the next minute and 15 seconds or so where Nilma not only has to be careful, but the Oni Warriors can set up for the next Fury. Vote has ulted in towards mid. Paul desperately trying to escape, but now so is Layers. Dardas is transformed into the Nemesis. Scarab's Blessing down. Vote knocked up and forward, and Layers will live. No more Palau. Triple root down from Vote, though, as the solo laners will rotate into these fights. Nika underneath the tier 2 tower, running down 1 kill. But can SOT find anything? Not just yet, but Cyclone Spin sure can. A roar. Not a roar, but a roar from SOT. Will trade back 1 kill as Cubo Fred on the retreat. And the Titans myth, it appears they have bought their time. 3 members down from the Oni Warriors on what looked like a good start to a fight, and it's going to be all but a deicide after Neil falls.
Over-aggressive play from the Oni Warriors. Nika loses out on 60% of his HP bar to a tier 2 tower alone just to finish off that kill. Phenomenal cleanse from Aurora is what separates that fight. If Layers gets pulled in by the Palau, Layers dies instantly and the Oni Warriors would have reset themselves. But because he's able to escape as far as he did, baits Nika out of position, baits Cubo Fred out of position. Vote has to go too far, doesn't win the 1v1 up against SOT just yet. And from there, the Tartarus Titans finally find a team fight where they were to dig in their heels and come out ahead. Experience nearly cut down to nothing. Gold significantly dropped as well. The Tartarus Titans draft starting to show the strength that we were considering from the offset. And all of a sudden, now that the neutral objectives spawn back up, the Tartarus Titans are going to have to answer a difficult question. Can you do it again?
Yep, they got 2 trebuchets, Smith, one on either side of the map. We've seen a variety of play styles around these trebuchets. Oftentimes teams will let it sit for a minute and then just kind of send it on its way. Titans have been happy just to sit on both of these trebuchets, not sending either down either side of the map. Though you start to set up for the Primal Fury. Relic situation not fantastic for the Titans. Beads down on both Paul and Aurora. But Cyclone Spin has both of his. And so could be worse, of course. But if the Oni Warriors were able to identify a couple of those targets, and not to mention beads down on SOT, so 3 relatively in-sync bead timers for the Oni Warriors to maybe capitalize on.
Yeah, I was thinking we would see the Oni Warriors just start up that Fury and make use of those burnt beads. Still an entire minute on SOT, Paul, and Aurora. Palau, you've got 2 opportunities at it. Both Cubo, Fred, and Dardas have access to that ability. Would either pull in one or force off the beads from the others, get the cleanse away from Paul or Aurora as well. But the Tartarus Titans, in just showing presence, are able to scare the Oni Warriors away from the Primal Fury itself. So where will you root your aggression? The Oni Warriors should want to play aggressively here still, despite the last fight not going their way, because you have to be concerned about the late game presence of this Titans draft. And you could see a vote of confidence from the Titans players themselves as they are posturing around the Fury. But maybe it's the Pyromancer that both these teams have their eyes on.
Yeah, we kind of bounce back and forth between the left and the right side of the map. Remember, there is still the advantage. If the Oni Warriors choose Pyromancer and Vote is stuck on the left side of the map, a numbers advantage is a massive difference in these fights. Although Cubo Fred and Layers may meet face-to-face, 1v1 on the right side of the map. Cubo Fred losing the initial trade, but has some burst damage around the end. Layers has his beads. Vote has ulted over towards right as well. And as you'd expect, an immediate rotation from the rest of the Titans over to the Primal Fury.
So the Oni Warriors just to play slow down here. The Tartarus Titans have not pulled out the Fury itself. Cubo Fred and Vote now rejoining their team in the center of the map. So commitment of Vote's ultimate as well as Layers on the right-hand side might be only separators here.
Beads now back up. That's big lockdown from the Oni Warriors and good cleave damage. Nilma bringing in SOT, who's got the Scarab's Blessing, can continue to fight here, but it's been delayed out. Palau hits its mark as Paul is pulled into the back line, and now the Oni Warriors have a smell for blood. They will surge forward, knock down their second as SOT takes a tumble, and the Oni Warriors pick up 2.
Nika comes up massive there, blink into the 3-man stun, locks down every single target, forces Paul low, and from there, Aurora says, well, I gotta save somebody's life, drops the Scarab's Blessing on SOT. It does find the reset, but only towards the rest of his team, and that's where the Oni Warriors already were. They were chasing out Paul, so SOT falls in trade, and now the Warriors got their eyes on the Fire Giant. Nobody from the Tartarus Titans anywhere in range. The only thing they've got their mind on is the consolation prize, Primal Fury. Hey, that helps with next Fire Giant.
They can't even do it, though. Primal Fury ends up getting dropped because Dardas and Nika walk through mid, and Fire Giant will get taken down, albeit a bit slower than the Oni Warriors may have hoped, but they get it nonetheless and delay the Primal Fury.
Tier 2?
From the Tartarus Titans.
No.
Trebuchet does get sent down right and left lane by the Titans, but will only reach as far as the right side Tier 2.
Left side, looks like Dardas might be looking for the 1v1, spotted out by Cyclone Spin, so he is able to maintain his life there. Cyclone has both relics as well, so maybe not a whole lot of threat. Meanwhile, on the right, Fred is under threat.
He's in trouble. He's got 4 members of the Tartarus Titans starting to rotate in. Is Vote actually going to take this, though? Ends up being the question. Pops his ultimate, does rotate in, but Fred is an afterthought now, trying to at least pull back one, though, are the rest of the Oni Warriors. My goodness, Aurora's gone, and SOT might be as well. These frontliners are just melting. Tardes gets a double kill, and the Oni Warriors happy to take that trade. Now, this Tier 2 tower, a lot more simple for the Oni Warriors to knock down.
Cyclone Spin has made his decision. He says, look, man, we're not taking this fight on the right-hand side. Instead, takes down the Tier 1 on left and continues his push there. The Oni Warriors have got this right side Phoenix. Nobody from the Tartarus Titans showing any form of presence. Aurora finally on the respawn. Layers turning the corner, but the Bird's already down to half.
Bird will go. Not much the Titans can do about it. Trebuchet plus Cyclone Spin continuing to find some damage.
Still working.
He'll get it. He'll get Tier 2 tower, so at least maximizing what the Titans are able to get. Takes a couple of tower shots, not too worried about it. I think you're right, though, Miff. I don't think the Titans would have had much of a fight anyway over on right. It's the best Cyclone Spin can do is open up a win condition later on. If somehow you get a big base defense, you deicide the Oni Warriors, you now just have an exposed Phoenix that you can walk towards. But the Oni Warriors have just looked so clean in the majority of their team fights over these last couple of games against a very good team fighting team in the Tartarus Titans. And sacrificing one, but realizing the rotation's going to be effective as well. I love that counter initiation by the Warriors.
And the Warriors have put themselves in a good position, but it's not necessarily over. Still 4 towers standing for the Tartarus Titans. On the left side of the map, Primal Fury up as well. And the Tartarus Titans composition is very good in a base defense. They've got a nearly infinite sustain thanks to this hell. They can send one out as the initiator, which will more than likely be SOT, and he's got that safety net of Scarab's Blessing every single time. If we see anyone straggling or overextending from the Oni Warriors, Layers can strip their defense pretty easily. So it's not as if the Tartarus Titans can't fight as 5. We haven't seen the opportunity just yet without maybe one person going too far. The Tartarus Titans chasing out a kill on the right-hand side. Now, when the game simplifies inside of these Phoenixes, we'll get a good look at what these two teams can do.
Still a decent amount of time on the Fire Giant, minute or so on the buff. Remember, Primal Fury still stands. Oni Warriors, unfazed, will knock down Tier 1 in mid as they send the Ardio into the mid lane. Ward coverage means Fred is spotted out here, so this will be no surprise. Exactly where he's rotating, though. A touch of a mystery to the Tartarus Titans. Under the Tier 2 tower they go. The Titans will at least step forward, so it doesn't look like many more Phoenix sieges over the horizon for the Warriors. Potentially a couple of towers going down. And maybe the best the Titans could hope for. It's the right side Phoenix that goes down. When the next Fire Giant's up, you can deal with those minions somewhat easily. Another multi-stun by Nika, though. That'll just force the Titans off of the Tier 2.
Left side Tier 2 still standing. 20 seconds left on the Fire Giant buff, and finally the Oni Warriors rotating as 5 towards this side of the map. The Tartarus Titans have been split up, exposing the tower.
I mean, what a dynamic team the Oni Warriors have looked like with Nika and Fred initiating, frontlining in the way they have been.
One more.
Come on. You got it.
Can't be Neil.
Yeah, you don't want it to be.
Dardas got it.
There you go. I don't know who it was. Somebody knocked it down. Actually might have been Neil's auto attack. At any rate, Oni Warriors get all of the towers off the map and a right side Phoenix. Near perfect as far as first Fire Giants go, and then double back for the Fury. 1,200 or more gold in hand for everyone on the Oni Warriors. You can go back, spend, and really make full use of this 9,000 gold lead that the Oni Warriors have built up. So it's time to really make use of what we have been calling a late game scaling composition for the Titans here. Of course you're down in gold, but you need an initiation to go better than they have been for the Titans if you really want to stand a chance here. If one more Fire Giant goes with a successful team fight from the Oni Warriors, could be looking at a quick 2-0.
Tartarus Titans, all relics available, ultimates up. They're starting to finish off those 4th items as well. So decent fight potential. I think we will see the Tartarus Titans show up around the Fire Giant. Right side Phoenix nearly on the respawn. Pretty easy to deal with those fire mini waves as you contend with the neutral objective. So expect to see the Titans step up to the neutral. Oni Warriors, on the other hand, they have their strategy. Utilize this heavy CC core to put pressure onto these relics. Have Cuvo Fred be that flank. Maybe connect with some of these high priority targets. Titans aren't stepping up. Fire Giants burn it quick.
Cuvo Fred did walk over a ward here. Fire Giant down to half HP. Oni Warriors back up. Fire Giant low. Cubo Fred dashes in as Layers has lost a whole lot of health. That's a big ultimate from Neilma to slow down the Titans on their disengage, and Vote will shred through Paul. Cyclone Spin on the other end of his Aegis might die as well. He does good damage in the meantime. Sets up for a kill onto Vote as SOT still wreaking havoc on the front line. And damage from Sot shuts down Dardas. A 2-for-2 fight nearly mirrored, though Cuvo Fred will tilt the scales back to the Oni Warriors as Layers and Aurora, the last two alive, and it might just be Layers here in a moment's time.
Aurora will fall down eventually, so it's all up to Layers as Cuvo Fred puts 3 onto his belt. Yeah, might as well go for the end. Layers might be able to put up a fight here, but no relics.
Well, you don't have
deja vu.
Look, there's no Vote or Dardas, so you really need Cuvo Fred to be dealing most of the damage to the Phoenix here. So 3 versus 2 Layers. Cubo Fred's got plenty of damage, and the Oni Warriors in 27 minutes are going to knock down the Titans, though Paul respawning here shortly. Don't think Paul's got the legs, though can maybe make some waves happen. Neilma will just zone out the hell, and the damage will roll through from the Oni Warriors on their way to a 2-0 victory over the Tartarus Titans.
Well, they do at least finish off Cuvo Fred towards the tail end, but the Oni Warriors have shown that they have come to play. After a week that I'm sure they're not too happy with last time around, they've come back with a new plan, reinvigorated, and they look good for it, man. That was 2 convincing victories.
Yeah, been hard to nail down exactly what Oni Warriors team we're going to get here this phase. This is the one the Oni Warriors fans saw towards the end of phase 1 when this team really started to hit its stride. And really, Miff, think back to the beginning. Yeah, think way back when, to like the beginning of season 8, right? And we're sitting down, we're talking about how we think this Oni Warriors team is going to look.
Super team.
Some world champions, some SSG players from a very talented SSG squad never hit their stride. These are the styles of games we assumed we would see from them.
Just coordinated attacks, utilizing their pressure incredibly well. Vote has a phenomenal set here, just getting everywhere on the map, getting active from the first minute.
Yep.
This is exactly what you want from the Oni Warriors. Every single one of these talented players firing on all cylinders.
Oni Warriors grab themselves a convincing 2-0 win over the Titans, who up to this point were undefeated. Can't wait to hear what the desk has to say about this one. We'll head on back to them for the breakdown.
Thank you so much, Dave and Miff. And what a set for the Oni Warriors to kind of find their breakout. You know, struggle against the Leviathans last week, a back-and-forth battle with the Solar Scarabs in their second. And this one, we were coming in wondering, which version of the Warriors are we going to get? Are we going to get the ones that get rolled by Leviathans? Are we going to get the ones who kind of hit that middle ground? Or are we going to get back to that Phase 1 Warriors that we knew, that number 3 seed? And in this set, the Oni Warriors come back from that number 3 seed in Phase number 1 and show that they are still a top team. And in what dominant performance. I mean, we were talking earlier on to the desk about how this dodgy Morgan combo, while not undefeated in Phase number 2, you know, sitting at 2-1, well, now they can add another win to that column, 3-1. This could be another combo that teams are going to have to be looking out for.
It's just deadly for them. And honestly, I think that, I mean, there's so much to highlight here. That combo has worked out incredibly well for the Warriors time and time and time again, but it is the transformations. Again, I have to give the credits. There's a reason we highlighted Dardas at the beginning of this, and there were a lot of Morgans in there. It is just the way he plays the god, transforming into whatever the team happens to need at any given time. Look, you get a 6.0 KDA, and for this one, there's a lot of transforming into, you know, we saw the Chernobog, we got to see a lot of that sort of aggression, and that really was great for them. I think Vote, once again, kicks things off to a brilliant start for the team, and that was a lot of it. I mean, they were up like 6-0 at one point before we started seeing kills for the Titans, and so I think the Warriors just figured out what that early game was, and they got there. Like, again, I was shaky on the Freya in game 1, and it didn't seem to matter. I was shaky a little bit going into this one as to how well it was going to work, but it was a comp that fit a little bit better, and then they just came out explosively anyway, so it didn't matter if there were windows of opportunity for the Titans. They were just so far ahead, and they had a lot of control. I'm also going to say, I think I cursed the Titans coming into this by immediately highlighting that they were on a win streak. That might have been like the worst thing I could have done for them.
You definitely broke. I'm sitting here watching the 10 box, and I'm paying close attention to Cubo because He popped off after getting the triple and then realized, oh wait, we still have to finish the game. And you see him trying to readjust himself, trying to get back into his chair, try and sit back down after his, celebration, and rightfully so. Ending the game with a triple kill, a 7-3 and 8 slash line for him. Vogt has an impressive game number 1 and an impressive game number 2, 3-2 and 7 on the Chernobog. Dardes, great transformation targets throughout. Neil Ma finally puts a win in his column on this Baron, now sitting at the 1 and 2 coming up into this phase, and well, at least an undefeated Baron in Season 9 of the SPL. And then Nika just becoming this power frontliner for his team. This Ardio, basically from minute 1, was a problem.
I think there's something that, and this is really fun to look at just historically, like where these teams are tackling each other. Because again, like the Dragons Bolts matchup, one that historically has gone the Dragons, but we got to see the Bolts do it. This is the second time that it's a 2-0 for the Warriors this year against the Titans. I don't know what they figured out, but they know the team well enough now.
Yeah, it really feels like every team is starting to dial in on some of those other opponents out here. The Only Warriors find a 2-0, and we get to talk with the Hunter for the Only Warriors. Standing by for our post-game interview, I've got Vogt, who joined me here. So, first off, congrats on your win. Got to say that, an impressive win up against the Titans. And talk to me about this Freya pick, because it popped up in game number 1. We were kind of questioning it. We know that she got a buff. Is it that just she's that good right now?
I think it just depends on how you want to play the game. Or because you have Dardes, who he will play Hunters. He likes to use Hunters every now and again, So having a little magical damage with the Hunters is always nice.
And kind of talking about Dardes and Cuvo specifically, during the pregame interview, we got to talk to Neil from your team, and we talked to Layers on the opposite team for the Titans. And he even pointed out that there was a clear combo that your team liked to play, and it felt like they just kind of played into your hand. They gave you the Morgan Dodgy combo. I mean, how does it feel just getting to kind of play basically whatever you guys want to?
I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I feel pretty good. You guys got a tough loss against the Leviathans last week, a nice win against the Scarabs, and now a 2-0 here today. I mean, how's the team feeling so far?
Well, this week we kind of had a mental breakdown. Scrims were a little bit rough.
Oh, wow.
A little bit rough. But mental breakdowns always help the team. There's always a big bounce back after the breakdown.
Yeah, and I imagine this win is definitely one that should help you guys out. Talking about things, what are some do you guys have like a pre-game ritual that your team does? Go out and get something to eat, or maybe a post-game ritual that you guys do on any kind of victories?
We just play ping pong whenever we come here before we play.
Believe me, I've been seeing the ping pong that you guys do.
We just slam ping pong, and Neil has to go to the bathroom before every game because he's a little baby. That's pretty much it.
Well, congratulations on your win. I'll let you get back to the team so you guys celebrate, maybe play some more ping pong, and make Neil go use the restroom real quick. Thanks for coming by, Vogt.
Thank you.
Always a lot of fun. I didn't realize that Neil had to go to the bathroom between every single game.
Oh yeah, no, like clockwork.
That's some inside info from Vogt, at least here in the studio. An impressive win out of the Only Warriors. They find a 2-0. Not an easy feat to begin with in the SPL against most teams, but up against the Tartarus Titans as well. But another thing to celebrate is that Gormizer, there's a birthday amongst our family out here. It's not you.
Am I getting 2 this year?
No, unfortunately, we're not Jithan, so we don't get to have multiple birthdays every year. Instead, it's Rach, one of our community managers out here for the Smite Pro League. So make sure that you go wish Rach a happy birthday over on Twitter. We've already got a post on the Smite Pro. So make sure you go over, say something nice, wish Rach a happy birthday.
Yeah, we love Rach. She was even in the video. I think she chose opposite me, but I'm not going to hold that against her for just being wrong. Like, sometimes you just are. It's okay. And I accept that. Actually, the Slash skin's really cool, so I can't even be that upset about it. But yeah, no, happy birthday, Rach.
Happy birthday.
We like having Rach around, dude.
Rach is great. She puts out a lot of great memes, helps run not only the Smite Pro, but also some of the other Smite Pro team.
She doesn't get mad at me when I accidentally curse when I'm doing my Smite game streams. That's the real dub, man.
She does a lot of scheduling. She's got to keep track of a lot of the other streamers and whatnot. And talking about scheduled stuff and whatnot, we still have more of the SPL scheduled for you guys. Let's take a look at tomorrow's roundup. So that's going to be starting at 1 p.m. We'll have the Solar Scarabs and the Valhalla Valkyries facing off, and then the Jade Dragons and the Atlantis Leviathans. Another big set for our week between the Dragons and the Leviathans. So make sure you tune in on that. And then Sunday we'll have our triple header to close things out. That'll start over at 11 a.m. But we still have SCC that will start out tomorrow. That will round out the rest of at least the NA region on there. One more look at the standings today gives us an actual clear 1 through 8. I mean, we're only a week and a half in at this point, but we actually do have a legitimate 1 through 8 as opposed to a 1-2-2-2 kind of nonsense out there. And Tartarus Titans at the 1-1. Oni Warriors back in their 3rd seed.
I'm really excited to see, because Warriors will play Bolts on Sunday, so like that one's going to be a big one. Bolts either can remain undefeated or the Warriors can knock themselves up to 3-1. But I also think Scarabs Valks, one of those teams, 0-8 I believe for the Valks in Phase 1, 1-7 for the Scarabs throughout all of it. So really that one is really crucial for those bottom 2, and I don't think it's as clear cut as it could have been. You know, last year it was pretty much always going to be cut, hey, yes, Scarabs should have the advantage. That one's going to be exciting.
A lot of back and forth between those 2 teams in Phase 1. We saw some back and forth in Masters, and now we'll get to see those 2 teams duke it out first thing at 1 p.m. tomorrow. But that's it for us here in the SPL. Thank you so much for tuning in. On behalf of myself, Gore, everybody else behind the scenes, we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. for more Smite Esports.